So the other day I made a video of wedding safety protocol, kind of like a complete guideline of everything I could think of to smush into that video to keep you and your wedding guests safe. So if you haven't already watched that video, maybe go watch that video first. I'll link it down below. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about 8 wedding reception ideas that are designed to, of course, still keep your guests safe, you and your guests safe, but that are also cute and fun. I've made videos in the past month or two where I wasn't so much keeping safety protocol in mind as much as I could have, because I was still thinking of like my wedding 1 year from now or maybe 2 years from now. And I have this mindset of like, things will be fine by then, and hopefully they will, but we don't really know. And then a lot of people are getting married right now or having mini weddings or micro weddings or whatever you want to call them right now, and they need safety advice now. So that's why I'm kind of in these 2 videos concentrating on more safety things we can use for our guests and ourselves right now. So anyway, that's where these wedding videos are coming from. I really hope they're helpful. I know they're not perfect. If there are any other pieces of advice that you know of, please let us know in the comments, because I know a lot of other people would benefit from them. And of course, I beg you to listen to the experts in your local area and do everything that's recommended in order to keep you and your guests as safe as possible. Okay, so the first item on my list is kind of a bunch of things rolled into one, but the basic premise is to have all of your guests at your wedding, instead of having tables, instead of having chairs at your wedding, you're basically having a picnic wedding. And the picnic blankets that you lay out are spaced 6 feet apart from each other or 2 meters apart from each other. And everything is pre-packed into a picnic basket, like all of the food, all of the appetizers, dessert, meal, it's all packed into a picnic basket for each picnic blanket pod. So essentially everything is set up for each pod, and then however many guests you're gonna have sitting at each pod, at each blanket, will be probably very few, because weddings are really small these days. But let's say for this example, there's 5 people sitting at each blanket, and those 5 people ideally would all be from the same household. So they're already living together, and so there's no need for them to socially distance. And for any elderly guests or guests with mobility issues, you could have picnic chairs set out for them so they don't have to sit on the ground. I would probably also recommend having like pillows or like some kind of cushions for people to sit on so they don't get uncomfortable. And what I really love about this setup is that 1, it's casual, and 2, everything is already there for them. And so there's not a lot of need for like staff walking around and like passing things around or anything like that. It really limits the contact between people. I feel like this setup, this wedding reception setup, really limits the amount of contact that needs to happen between people. And then just like at like a normal wedding, the couple can at some point in the reception kind of walk around from picnic blanket to picnic blanket from a safe distance, wearing their masks, and socialize as much as possible with each kind of picnic blanket pod. And with this setup, you could do the same sort of socially distancing games that you would with people sitting at tables. I talked about this in another video, games and things you can do in place of dancing. So if you haven't seen that video, I will also link that down below. But essentially you could do things like people dancing just with their household, like little dancing pods on top of the picnic blankets if you wanted to do something like that. It depends on your crowd. Or you could do things like music, bingo, or trivia, where each blanket pod is a team and they kind of compete against each other. So it can be actually really cute. Or things like projecting a movie outside or in your venue if they have that capability, or having inside the picnic baskets or next to the picnic baskets like a stack of board games, and then the individual little picnic pods can play board games with each other. Okay, my second idea on this list is so we're just going back to normal tables now. If you're gonna have tables at your reception, instead of having centerpieces, you could just have the centerpieces be dessert. So have a little mini cake for each table, and that way dessert doesn't need to be passed around, which can be unsafe these days. Instead, every table has their own individual dessert, and it could be like a really cute centerpiece actually with numbers on it, or some kind of themed cake or donuts or cupcakes or whatever, some kind of cute themed dessert that becomes a beautiful centerpiece. And while I'm at it, I mentioned this in my other safety protocol video, but you should just have everybody at the table be eating family style or in bento boxes, just to limit the amount of food being passed around by servers, if possible. Okay, the third idea is to do color-coded bracelets based on what kind of social distancing interaction your guests want to have with each other. And this is kind of a weird one. You have to really decide if this will work for you and your guests. guess, but here's the idea. Basically, you have maybe 2 or 3 wristbands, kind of like those Livestrong wristbands or whatever, any kind of wristbands you want. I'll try to find some cute ones actually, and if I remember, I will link them down below. For example, say your wedding colors are blue and gold. You would have gold wristbands and blue wristbands, and a sign that explains to take one or the other. And the gold wristbands might be for people who do not want any kind of physical contact or don't want to be closer than 6 feet to other people. So they would put on a gold wristband and everybody knows we should definitely stay 6 feet away from that person at all times. And then the blue wristbands might be for people who the sign might say something like, I might be okay with physical contact or coming closer than 6 feet, but please ask me first. I think that consent piece is pretty important. So just letting guests know that they should ask other guests first before approaching them. But then one color represents like, don't even ask. That person wants to stay 6 feet apart at all times. So again, this won't work for everybody, but maybe a color-coded system could work for you and your guests. That's a conversation you have to have with your partner. Number 4 might be kind of obvious for some people, but I thought it's worth mentioning because I have seen pictures of weddings where people are wearing masks, but the masks aren't super cute. They're just kind of like regular medical masks, which is fine. But a cuter idea for photos might be to get your guests all matching masks, or masks that fit your wedding color scheme, or bedazzled masks or tie-dyed masks, or maybe embroidered masks that say you and your fiance's name and the date, something like that. Again, I will try to find some cute examples of this, and if I remember, I will link them down below if you're having some trouble finding cute wedding masks. Number 5 is related to the last one, and that is to provide cute care packages for your guests. So maybe at every seat you can have a little care package that includes a face mask, a mini hand sanitizer, maybe one of those bracelets that we talked about and an explanation for which color they should be wearing, and then maybe some kind of note of the safety precautions for the night. The 5th idea on my list definitely shows my teacher background, and it is to play the game Kahoot with your guests. This is a replacement for dancing at your wedding, and it's kind of like a digital way of playing trivia. I've played it with a lot of my students, my adult students, and I guess to explain it really simply, it's just like playing traditional trivia, but instead of writing down your answers on a piece of paper, it's all done on phones. So everybody would use their individual phone to answer the questions in real time. And it's totally free to set up a Kahoot account, and super easy, so you can go do that now and just look at it if you want. And if you have guests who aren't really comfortable with technology, it's okay, because you can play in teams or in pairs, and basically like everyone sees a trivia question. Maybe it'll be about you guys, because you make the trivia questions, or it can be real traditional trivia questions. And it's a multiple choice game, so people just kind of like press a button, and it's just kind of like a fast-paced, more fun version of trivia, in my opinion. It's all digital, so it's really, really safe in this environment. The 7th idea I want to talk about is a virtual guest book. So having a traditional guest book could potentially be a little bit dangerous. I talked about this in my other video, just because if everyone's using a shared pen, that's not really ideal. So you could do a virtual guest book, which would be something like everybody would type their answer and send it to you, and then you would compile those answers into a guest book later. So let's talk about the pros and cons here. What you lose with a digital guest book is that you don't get to see your guest's handwriting. But what you gain with a virtual guest book, especially if you do it like I'm going to tell you in just a second, is that you get a message from every single person at your wedding. A traditional guest book, a lot of people skip it, they walk right by it, and they never sign it, and you probably get like 50 or 60% of people actually writing you a message in your guest book. So with the way I'm going to tell you, you would take 10 minutes out of your reception where everybody's sitting at the table, maybe right before the toast or right after the toast, and you ask everybody to pull out their phones and write you a little message for your wedding. Just be like, all right guys, we're doing a digital virtual guest book. Everybody, whatever means of communication you write me on, whether it's email, messenger, WhatsApp, whatever, write me a little message right now. I'm gonna give everybody 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Maybe you think this is a little presumptuous and stupid, so you don't have to do it, but as the teacher in me says, this is what I would like to have all my guests do at this moment. Really like taking the time out of the day and everybody's quiet for 5 minutes and types you a little guest book message. And this is 2020, so the rules are, there are no rules and you can do whatever you want. And for those guests who aren't comfortable with technology, maybe you can slip a couple blank cards and pens into their care packages and they can use those instead of the digital way. And if you think the virtual guest book idea is dumb, maybe you'll like number 8, which is a video guest book. So a lot of people do this already at their weddings. Basically, somebody walks around with a camera and records everybody saying a message to the couple. This is so much better than a paper guest book, in my opinion, because you can hear everybody's voices, you can see their faces, and in 20 years, you can look back on that video. It'll require you asking somebody to kind of take charge of this. Maybe it's a sibling or something, and they will have to kind of walk around for a good hour, or I don't know how many guests you're gonna have, but depending on the number of guests you have, could take a little bit longer, but it will require them walking around and recording these messages and then compiling them after into kind of a compilation video. So hopefully you have somebody in your life who can take on this task for you at your wedding. If not, oh well, but I think it could be really cool, especially if you tell your guests that you're gonna be doing this in advance so they have a little bit of time to think about it and plan their message to you. All right, everybody, that's all I have for today. I hope this was helpful. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.